To have living faith requires that sometimes we actually believe that things can happen that seem impossible. We've been covering the faith chapter of the Bible, Hebrews chapter 11. Many examples beginning with Abraham and Abel and Enoch of those men and women who lived by faith, who, as it says in verse 1, where faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. There's one example in this story that is a head scratcher perhaps for some, when it talks about Sarah. In verse 11, by faith, Sarah herself also received strength to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the age, because she judged him faithful who had promised, speaking of God. If you remember the account from Genesis, Sarah and Abraham were visited, and they were told they were going to have a child in their old age, the child of promise, which would be Isaac. But Sarah laughed at the news when Abraham brought it to her that she, at her advanced age, it says that she was past the age of childbearing, and Abraham was about 100 years old when that happened, so she was pretty close to that as well. And she said, how could that happen? Just impossible for me to bear a child. And circumstances kind of got distorted, and eventually she did conceive. She bore a son named Isaac, who was the child of promise by faith. It goes on here in verse 12 of Hebrews 11. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born as many as the stars of the sky in multitude, innumerable as the sand which is by the seashore. Isaac and then Jacob and Jacob's sons ultimately gave rise to a genealogy that continues to impact the world, history, and especially prophecy. The promises that they were made about Isaac did indeed come true, and we are living with the result to this day. And so the story of Sarah out of Hebrews 11, who laughed when she was told that she would conceive a child in her old age. Sometimes that belief that translates ultimately into a living, dynamic, and active faith requires us to believe that God can do the impossible, or at least what is to us at our level of physical life and existence impossible. That's an element of faith that we learn when we look at the story of Sarah. That's BT Daily. Join us next time.